Hello and welcome to the Brazilian BA Guest. It's a pleasure to have you here. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, please do so right now. Click on the bell so you'll be warned every time we have a new video. Since the beginning of this year, I have been bringing a set of guests to talk about nimble. How can organizations sense and respond to change precisely and fastly? Today, my guest is a very important guest, Mr. Ivar Jacobson. Ivar, thank you for coming and joining me. It's a pleasure to have you here again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is the third time, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, that's the third time in my channel. Thank you so much. You're one of my most viewed interviews, and I'm very honored to have you here again. Today, Ivar, our question for this episode is, can use cases and user stories be partners for Nimble? And I know, and maybe someone who is watching us may be not aware about that, but you are the father of use cases. You were the one who created those and make them part of UML. And world have changed very much since use cases and UML were created. We had a very strong wave of agile, and user stories at some point became the most used practice to describe requirements in software engineering. So I think we should start by asking about methodologies and methods. Is there a single method that could make my organization nimble?
No, not a single one. But there is an approach that you can, anyone can create their own method. It is probably not practical that everybody has their own method, but at least an organization can put together what works most for them, best for them in different situations. Let me just say interrupt a little. As you can hear, I have a little rusty voice, and that is because of a little infection that will disappear soon. But I couldn't imagine canceling this fantastic meeting. So if you can live with a rusty voice, we just go on. So back to
thank you for joining me, and be my guest if you have to take a glass of water at some point to stop. We are all your fans here. Nuno is saying he's a big fan of use cases as well. So we have people. And for those who are watching, if you have your questions or comments, please put on the chat.
Yes, so the approach we take generally to nimbleness is that we have created a way to develop an ecosystem of practices from which teams and organizations can select the practices that fit them the best. So the idea is that there is no single method that works in every situation. It has been tried and proven. I was myself a creator of one of the most popular methods 25 years ago or something like that, rational unified process. Every big company used it, and even small companies. Every consultant needed to know what RAP was, so we could get engagement. And but that and I felt it was personally, I felt it was all ridiculous that one single method would get that kind of success. So that is how we started to think in a different way. Can we find a way to create a big practice library that you can select the practices you need and want to into a method, and in that way create nimbleness.
I like that, and that's an interesting way of seeing it. So it's not that practices are useless. By the contrary, practices are very useful for specific contexts. So you can help me to select the best practice, and I can create the method that makes my organization, my specific context, more nimble. So that seems very useful. And I know the name of this library is Essence. Can you talk a little bit about Essence and how does it look like and works?
So Essence is a platform. It's a common ground that can be used when you start describing your own practices, your own method, whatever you want to describe. And it doesn't need to be software. It started for software, but most practices that are now in the library are not necessarily only for software. There are Kanban, Scrum, there is the flow system, and there are 12 famous methodologies that all have used this platform to redescribe their practices. And we do it for many reasons. One is that they actually make the practice easier to understand. It's much more clear. It is based on a very simple language that you can learn in a couple of hours, and I would say less than a couple of hours. And you can create in that way basically any method that is out there can be redescribed using this Essence platform. And the platform, it's basically a vocabulary, and it is a vocabulary that has not only a syntax, a graphical, visual, simple syntax, but also a deep semantics. And that is a huge differentiator compared to most methods that are described just using pictures. Semantics means you can do so much more. You can play many more games than you can play otherwise. And we definitely stimulate a lot of games. So just for instance, with Scrum, I think we have 16 games that we can play, different games, which are serious games, really valuable, engaging the team, making the team really having an interesting and learning experience. Every member becomes engaged. It's not just the top guys that are engaged.
And if someone wants to see these games and this content, where they can find this information?
Yeah, they can find it. There is an organization that actually the community we organized, where hundreds of people were engaged in creating this essence. Of course, not everybody had huge impact, but we were very clear about it needs to be. It's not. We are not compromising just to be friends. We are compromising because we get a better way of doing it. So it is community work originating from my company. And this it has then become an international standard. So it's gone through a standardization process, which is a lot of work. It took 5 years to go through standardization, but it was worth it because now there is an organization that owns it. It's not me and my company. It's an international organization. Actually, it's Object Management Group.
I will add a link below this video. If you're watching it recorded, or if you are watching it now, come later to get the links below this video so people can find the address and join this community. Is that possible?
Absolutely. We will arrange that. All
Perfect.
These things.
Perfect.
There are many interesting links related. Now I talk about the essence, but we are soon moving over to talk about use cases and user stories, and then there are other links.
Yes, and that's the name of this episode, and I don't want to delay very much in a approaching use cases and user stories. And usually when we talk about nimble, we use this definition of nimble that came from this article that IIBA wrote in the final of last year, being nimble. And they say that nimble is the scalable capability for organizations to sense and respond to change quickly and precisely. I know that people may understand nimble differently, but this is how I'm using the word. So I want to make that clear. Then when we are talking about agile, we're talking about ways of working, and we are talking about nimble, we're talking about a capability. I can do agile to be nimble. So that's the difference. That's one is the way of working, the other one is how you work. And something that bothers me, and probably you as well, is that usually use cases is not a listed technique in the most part of agile approaches and methods. People don't list use case as an agile approach. My question for you is, can use case be nimble?
Of course, they have basically been nimble, but they belong to the rational unified process that was, as I mentioned earlier, very popular 20, 25 years ago. And that was considered not agile. For we don't need to go into it, but really it was not necessarily correct that it wasn't agile, but it could have been more agile. It was not light; it was a heavy process, so that is not agile. So anyway, it fell with RUP use cases. It fell, but it has still always been used. If you Google, for instance, I have not done it right today, but if you Google user story within quotation, and you Google use case within quotes, you'll find that use case has maybe 10 times more hits. It's a significant different, and that is because the term use case and has become an normal English word. So when you describe new products, for instance, self-driving cars or big data, you talk about the use cases of these systems. So use cases have not fallen apart. It has fallen away from being centric when it comes to development. That is where user stories have been very successful. And they are, the thing is that they are perfect partners. Use cases help you with a big story, the big picture, and user stories help you to build in small increments, small in iterations or sprints. So together they are a perfect couple, and that is what we now are working quite a lot on top about in a community that we recently have created. But we can come back to that later. So I would say definitely they are very together a very nimble way of working.
Could you give us some examples, some very practical example where we could see a user story in a backlog and how that would how use cases could partner with that user story? Would a user story become a use cases? Would a user story become several use cases? Or is it the opposite? Is a use case several user stories? How do you see that in a very specific way? So someone can look for that and see their work.
The way we see it today, and I think it's not only me and my company. It's something we share with Alistair Cockburn, who has written maybe the most popular book on use cases. writing essentially use cases. I think he calls it writing effective use cases. So, and we have written other books that are more formal, less playful, if I say it. So popularity comes, of course, with that it's very easy to get the idea. And so together we have agreed we need to get use cases back because we fill a hole that is not filled by any other practices. And I'm not only talking about user stories, but there are a whole bunch of practices that are working in similar space. But let me tell you, use cases are much fewer than user stories. So for the same product, you may, for let's say 10 use cases, have hundreds of user stories. And of course, hundreds of user stories need to be grouped in a great way. And so basically, what our approach, specific approach, is that we start identifying use cases, and we do that in a session that some people call forming, storming, norming, and performing, which is a very interesting way of doing it. I've seen and I've worked with that with many clients. In a couple of hours, you can actually have a picture of the whole system. You start by thinking about who are the actors, who are the users of this system. And for every product, you know that most products, I would say, that have normal users, they can do something with a product. And that is a use case. We basically define a use case in a practical way, like a use case is all the ways of using a system with a goal for a particular user. So goal is important, particular user is important. A system is the entity that owns the use case. And that is basically the definition we have agreed upon within a group of people, where Alistair and I have leadership.
I will repeat it because that's important. So a use case is all the particular ways a user can achieve a goal using a specific system. Is that correct?
Not quite. A use case always ways of using a system with a particular goal. No, with a goal for a particular user.
All right.
So it's not. It's very important that there is an entity for this use case, and the use entity is the system. We can call it a system. It can, of course, be a business. It can be many other things that are like a system. And I can show you a little later what we have done in recent times. But the approach is that we start to identify the actors, the users. We call them actors because they can be other systems as well. Okay. And so we start to identify the users, and then we identify all the ways they can use the system. A particular user can use the system. Once we have identified use case like that, we don't start by identifying all the ways or all the exceptions and so on. We start by identifying maybe one scenario. And once we have done that, and for every user, typically there is first the primary user, namely, for instance, in my background, we developed telephone switching systems, So a typical user was a subscriber. That was the primary user. And the use case, most important use case for that one was to make a telephone call. And so that is a use case, make a telephone call. But then there are other users too. There are users that manage the traffic. There are users that supervise the traffic. And there are several other users, but they are secondary users. And we may have tertiary users as well. Once you have identified your use cases, you slice them. And typically a slice is something that gives value. And they are not sliced like you slice a sausage, slice by slice. You slice them more like the human, you can think about the human system with breathing system and eating system. And,
digesting.
They are slices like in that way. But and then you for every slice you identify different stories, user stories. So and then user stories are what user stories always are. So there is a very clear process in how you can do this job. But then how much do you do? That is because we know that we have to decide, we have to prioritize, and we release in we have many different releases, and when you identify, so you cut off when you feel you have enough for the next release.
Yes,
and you can so you can do very little on the use case level and start with user stories quite quickly. And in that way, it's quite nimble. Now, why is another reason it's nimble is that there is not only one way of doing it. So what Alistair and I have suggested and got the wide acceptance for is that there is a foundation. There is a, let's say, foundational practice, a use case foundation, on top of which we can build different ways of doing use cases. So doing use cases with user stories is not one single way. It can be many ways. We are now in my company, we are developing 5 different ways of doing it, dependent on what kind of organization, what kind of problem you have. So you can be really nimble when it comes to what is our use cases. Alistair has his way of doing it, which is in many ways not in deep idea. It's the same idea, but when it comes to how to express it, how to teach it, there are significant differences, and that's okay, as long as there are people that like it, and I'm sure there are for both of us and many others. So, and we know other people that have their use cases as well. But it all starts with that we have a common ground for what I was about to say, heck, is a use case. And if you allow me, I can show you what we have done there.
Sure. Let me bring you some comments and questions from the audience.
Yes.
And if you want to share your screen, be my guest. So a LinkedIn user, I would bet it's Robert, who's always come here and his name never appears, but he said, in my humble opinion, use cases are the unsung heroes of business analysis. They help us think about a scenario in a way that also help us test that scenario. Very nimble. So Indy said, and Indy makes a question. So use cases as a figure of speech in English appear to have a different connotations depending on the business function, business architecture, business analysis, customer, etc. Use cases and user stories can be matched together, though, can they?
Yeah, absolutely perfectly. We are, well, I can come to that later. Yes.
Perfect. So Indy still brings me another comment and question here. Do these techniques apply to strategic enterprise analysis as well? You mentioned about software engineering, and that's very, let's say, on the operational side of how the software works, functionalities of a system, but can we apply that strategically? I have participated in sessions, she says, led by a consulting company where they have defined user personas, user stories, and etc., and then use this to define strategy. This feels backward to me.
I'm not quite sure what she means, but clearly that you can use use cases at the strategic level. As I mentioned, we can very quickly in a session come up with a starting point for what is which are the use cases of this system we are developing. And the system, it can be, as I mentioned, also it can be a business system. They have been very much used. We talk about business use cases, have been very much used to describe the processes of an organization and how these processes are realized in terms of workers and use cases of software and so on. So it's it is very much applicable for strategic discussions.
Perfect. And Angela agrees with you. She says both use cases and user stories can be used at all levels of detail. The issue is most teams neglect the higher levels. That's, in her opinion, what happens. Both techniques can start high level and be split into increments. And that's an agile way or a nimble way, if you want to say, of using use cases.
Yeah, there's only one addition I would like to make, Angela, and that is that when you use use cases, since they are basically owned by an entity, so use case is all the ways to use a system. And it means that there must be an entity around the use case. It's not the function decomposition. Function decomposition may have value in some situations, but if we start see use cases as functions, then we will lose their strength. So use cases can be decomposed, but then it decomposed into another subsystem. So a use case can have a system can have use cases. That system can have subsystems, and these subsystems can have use cases. And the relationship between the use cases on the higher level and the use case of a lower level is usually that the use cases at the lower level can communicate with one another.
I like that. So you're talking about it's not the use case are decomposed, but the entities are decomposed. So you can start with an organization or a business as an entity, and then decompose it between subsystems and components of those subsystems. And that's a very interesting point of view. And I think it relates to Nuno comments here. A use case diagram helped me to not lose the bigger picture. So seeing the whole of the entity, as I use them nowadays together with user stories for backlog purpose. And I want to question you about this idea of backlog and use cases. I see that user stories are very useful for composing a backlog. And when I think about a backlog, I think about all the work that I have to do that is not done. So, and also sometimes people refer to a user story as an invitation to a chat. So I have a user story. It's not supposed that you have all the descriptions of how things should work. It's just an invitation for a chat about something that we have to go deeper and describe.
It's a
That's
placeholder
not.
for conversation.
It's a place for a good conversation. Yes, that's not what a use case description is. Usually, when I think about a use case description, I think about all the possible scenarios of executing that specific use case. It should be very well detailed. It should work as an agreement between who is asking for something to be done and someone who is dealing. And it also should work as some kind of documentation for future improvements. If I want to improve that use case, I can create a new version of it and put in some additional concepts on it. It's a longer time
A
specification than a
use
user
case
story.
is permanent record for the requirements. User stories are not that. So that is one of the differentiators. But you need user stories for the development, and it's very practical tool for development. But from a use case, you can, first of all, you mentioned all the alternative paths and exceptions. That is not how you work. You may take only one path. You may only take the happy day path and create from that, identify user stories to implement the happy day path. It can be a very long path, actually. If you take a telephone call, to go from that you lift the phone till you have finished the call is probably many user stories. So it is you can work very incrementally and very with low formalism with use cases. I'll tell you later what whenever we are ready to talk about it. I like to show you what the use case foundation looks like, and how we can use it.
Right. So there's another comment here. Such a critical point. User stories are not durable. Use cases are durable. And yes, that's Robert Snyder, my friend from Chicago, who is there. So, perfect. So if you want to share something, please do so right now.
So how do I do that?
There's a button behind us, present. If I'll go, and you can share your screen. You have to click on that, select the screen you want to share, or the tool you want to share, the window, and click on it and then share.
Yeah, I did, but
there's probably additional clicks. Click on the window you want to share and then share.
Okay, I'll see. So now I have a window, and now right, I lost you. So where
Angela thinks both use case and user stories can be reusable assets as well. So different viewpoints. And I like that, because what Ivar was telling us is that there is not such a single way of using those techniques. And that's what nimbleness is about, is figuring out what is the best way you can use in your organization. User stories, use cases, not just one way to use it. Did you find it, Ivar?
No, I found it, but now I cannot find you.
But you didn't share. I can't see your screen yet.
I cannot. I'm happy if I can find you again.
I'll tap, maybe.
Where? What is it? A Zoom call or what is it?
It's in your browser.
No.
I am in your browser. So if you alt tab, maybe it's an easier way to find me.
Oh. I have totally lost you here.
We're with you, Ivar. Don't worry. We're gonna find us.
I wonder what use case I should use now. Maybe it's a user story. Um, it's totally gone for me. So I
Right.
have to
So
connect again, I think.
no,
Or
I don't think so. I'm there somewhere. If you have a browser opened, I'm probably in your browser.
yeah, I have a browser open. I
Do you
have,
have all the tabs? So I am in a tab called StreamYard.
yes, I know. But now I am at, okay, let's see. Okay.
Did you find me?
No.
I'm here with you, Ivar. Don't worry.
It's amazing that this can happen.
That's. I have a friend who says that technology is a science that was created to solve problems that did not exist before it was created. So that's what technology is about: solving problems that were not created before it was happened.
Oh, I think I have to reconnect.
Okay, if that's the best way for you, but uh,
It's nothing. I look at every.
you're there somewhere because I'm seeing you. It did not disconnect.
No, you see here now.
Yes, I can see you
Oh,
again. So
now
let
I'm
me
back.
bring you. Now you're twice here, and I just changed it. So you're back,
Okay.
and I'll disconnect the other you. Uh, I hope it works. So now I have just one of you here. Perfect. Are you
Okay.
seeing me?
Yes. Yes.
That's good.
All right. So I give up on trying to show you. So there is basically a document that we can provide called Use Case Foundation. It
Okay.
defines what the use case is. It defines different ways of different principles that we have for use cases. And it's a document that it's only 4 pages. And it's a common ground that if you want to develop a use case practice or something like that, you can use this common ground and people will understand it because they have learned this common ground in some other way.
This is your
So
website, right?
yeah, it's not there, I think.
It's not.
maybe,
It's not. It's not here.
maybe if you search for a use case foundation, yeah, there
Yes.
it is.
Yes. That's the point. Use case foundation.
Wonderful.
Right.
So
So you guide me.
okay, so here you see above this picture, you have a use case, a definition of a use case. A use case is all the ways, that one, of using a system to achieve a goal of a particular user.
Okay.
So that is a definition we have, Alistair and I have suggested, and it's part of his use case foundation. So if you scroll down,
Core concepts.
yeah, and
This.
this is hard to read, I think, for people.
I'll put it. Is it
Yeah,
better now?
yeah, it's clearly better. So it's so these are a couple of things it says. It talks about what the use case is, the actors are, and if you scroll down further down, the system of interest is really key.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot describe use cases according to this definition that they don't have a system. So they are not like functions. There can be all kinds of functions, and function can be decomposed. Use cases cannot be decomposed unless you have subsystems that you decompose to.
Right. So you're
So
decompose systems and not use cases. I like it that was an important definition for me to understand it better.
yeah, but the use cases become smaller parts of a higher level use case. So use
Perfect.
case of a subsystem becomes smaller parts that then interact with other with use cases in other subsystems. And these other subsystems works as actors. They are like users to the system of one low level use case. And the goal, there is a goal at this level. The use case have goals, but inside a use case, there may be activities and things to be done, and there are things you produce. So these activities are smaller parts of a use case.
I'm copying and pasting this link on the chat. So if someone wants to join us in navigating on this web page, so it's already on the chat. And there's an example here where you have some actors, a use case, some actors starting a use case that interact with some other actors. He has a goal in mind, right? There's a system of interest here, who is an entity where the use case is part of it.
Yeah. So Fabrizio, I will send to you another deck to regarding what. Let's see. I have a slide here. I would like to show. Yes, this one. Now I just need to come back to you.
I'll start.
That's it. So now I present and slides. There are no slides. I really don't know how to get it. But basically, in a simple way, this use case foundation can now be used by anybody to describe their own way of doing use cases and integrating their use cases with user stories. And in our case, we have done 5 such specific use cases based on our experience from before. So, for instance, these 5 are all using the use case foundation. And so if you have understood the use case foundation, it's applicable for all these 5. The simplest one is called use case storytelling. It's a very simple way of describing the use cases as stories, kind of storytelling. It's there are no models, no diagrams, but it's very basic. Then you can have a more advanced with a relationship between use cases, but still not any diagrams and use case offering. We have a lightweight modeling use case where you do basically very simple diagram and nothing related to every use case, but you describe all use cases in one diagram, and it's very, very, very light. You can understand it. You can get a big picture of the system you are building or the system you have by looking at this diagram. You can then go more, and we have one use case we call use case modeling. When we are much more deeper, we can actually describe every use case with activity diagrams, or we can use sequence diagrams to describe how use case and the actor interacts. So there are much more details in how to use it. And the 5th one is the most advanced, is use case realization. So we basically first describe the use case, specify the use case, but we also then go on and implement the use case. We create an architecture based on the use cases, and we go to test of each use case, because every use case become, let's say, a group of test cases. So all these 5 different use cases is our way of providing a set of use cases. These are 5, and that's just the beginning. We are then using use cases for business analysis, for business modeling. So you have business use cases, and there is a whole bunch of more different ways of using use cases in different situations.
Well, as we were mentioning, you mentioned before, Angela and Robert spoke about different ways of using it, reusable or not. There's a comment here from Susan. She's nodding. Scenario, context, story, branching logic, and whether that logic resides in software or inside a person's head. Primarily path, peripheral path, parallel path, error path, also valuable to have on paper to discourage spaghetti processes. And so having a way to organize all those different paths, all those different logics is key to understanding and to provide an understanding of a business, a scenario, a system, or whatever you're trying to build and improve. And that I see as very powerful key factor that use cases brings. And it also helps us to create some contexts, to create not just context, sorry, to create a scope in something that I can call a use case. That's for me very useful. Usually when I just see user stories, I can see thousands of user stories, but I don't see the whole picture. And that picture in a whole is very useful for me. And Robert says storytelling, the long arc of customer story / journey. Notice that LinkedIn uses the word theater in the URL of this event. Yes, so it's a storytelling. Perfect. And a use case is also some kind of storytelling. You're telling how the user achieves his or her goal. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So what we have done is created an initiative, and it's all on LinkedIn, and where we have invite people to create their own version of use cases. And we know there are many people that teach use cases. They want to teach it their way, and we just welcome it. The market will decide the way to do it, but that's not always true. Sometimes the most brilliant solutions are not swallowed by the market, so to speak. But we have also agreed to identify initiatives to integrate use cases with other techniques. So, for instance, we have already triggered 2 such initiatives. One is integrating use cases with stories, user stories. And in that initiative, we have I don't know if he is the father, but he is the most influential person when it comes to user stories. We really want to have something that these people agree on, and that is Mike Cohn. So Mike Cohn and another guy who is also very influential, he has written a book, is Ian Spence. He is associated with my company. And so he has actually worked with Alistair and myself to create this use case foundation. We have, so that's one initiative, and they will report, and people can jump in and join this initiative as they want. It's not controlled by anybody, so there is no supervising body. Alistair and I keep our fingers away from it and let things happen as it turns out. Another such initiative is integrating use cases with BDD, behavior-driven development, and acceptance test driven development. And it's Ken Pugh who is the experts here. You know Ken Pugh, I'm sure,
Sure.
Fabrizio.
Yeah.
And there are more such initiatives in the pipeline that will come out. And I think we have also created a LinkedIn group called Reframing Use Cases, where I think it has about 300 members now. But many of them are really experts in the field and will participate in helping us to show the value of use cases in combination with other practices. And there are a whole bunch of other practices that are of interest here.
Perfect. And if people want to join this group, I will add the link below this video on YouTube or on LinkedIn. And so please come back. If you're watching it right now live, come back. If you're watching it recorded, it's probably here. Just look for it and we will put the list of links that Ivar mentioned so you can join this group of people who are identifying new ways or different ways of using use cases for development of new business, new software, new products. Perfect, Ivar. Is there any point that we're missing here, Ivar, and that we should add to this conversation? And I forgot to ask you.
I don't think we have reached the key points at least. I think maybe I should tell you why we haven't. I mean, we were using use cases a lot 20 years ago. The whole world used use cases, and it basically went out of fashion because it was seen as part of rational unified process. And we didn't really make an effort to do something about it because we felt we had enough to make Essence successful, because we felt that this is the really thing that we need to be really nimble. And we didn't use that word nimble, but that is what it's called today. So we think we spent all our energy. We see now that the Essence and its application, I mean, today more than 12 famous methodologists have adopted Essence to redescribe their own stuff. This is, I believe, the first time in the history of software engineering where methodologists collaborate. Because generally speaking, we have a methods war, and people fight, and people belong to one of the methods sects, as I call it, which I think is really a bad development for industry. So I think we are now seeing that it's time to get use cases back. It happened when Alistair wrote an article where he basically said, I saw it on LinkedIn, he basically said use cases should play a very important role. So I contacted Alistair and I suggested, why don't we try to get them back? And he said yes immediately. And that resulted, we wrote a paper together that you also can add to the list called Use Cases Are Essential. And it's published in ACMQ, so it's widely downloaded. Well, I think more than 13,000 downloads. And then we also had a meetup, and that meetup was in November, I think. And we are having a new meetup in 2 days.
I saw that. I was in the first one, and I'm looking forward for the next one. So the next meetup is happening 2 days. Is that correct?
Yes, on Thursday at 6 p.m., I think, UK time.
Perfect. And people can join that. So another
Most
link for us
welcome.
to put here, right?
Yes, most welcome. I'll try to fix my voice till Thursday.
I hope you get better. But I see you are very
Maybe Camper India will help me.
yes, I hope so. Ivar, there's a last question here, so we could not end a conversation today without talking about AI. So, with the rise of LLM-based AI agents, do you think use case discovery will shift from being primarily a human slash business analyst activity to an AI business analyst activity? What's your guess on that?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. We cannot skip that. Yes, I don't think so. I think, I think some routine work that always is associated with development can be taken over by co-pilots or similar things. We still, I think this is one of the last professions that will be hit badly by AI. There are much worse examples in the development for developers in general. But let me tell you that AI has been on my radar screen for so many years, so I am ashamed of telling you. But about 20 years ago, I founded a company to develop AI support for rational unified process, and we were very successful in one way. We used intelligent agents, which is a kind of expert system technique, and we could support many of the practices that were in RAP in a wonderful way. The product, people who used it loved it, but it came at the same time as Agile, and Agile won. I think using AI is really agile, but we got the reward. We got the Jolt Award 2003 or 4 for one of the most interesting technical products at that time. And we shut the shop down in 2006, and I took over that company to my current company and all the people. And we have just been waiting. When is this AI coming back? And what we are now working on is a product that supports our other products in a fantastic way. We will show in a couple of months that AI plus Essence is fundamentally better than just AI for engineering. And logically, we can understand why it will be like that. Namely, Essence is like a playground for engineering. And thanks to they have a playground. The other approaches for AI has no playground. It's particularly those who are based on large language models. So a couple of months from now, I think we already very soon will have a product to show how use cases will be supported by AI, by our AI. So in a couple of months, we hope to have something that clearly demonstrate that having a playground like Essence makes it so much higher quality when it comes to results you get when you prompt questions.
So looking forward to see that, but just not to left the question unanswered. You were if I understood it right, you're saying that AI will help business and human people to do the analysis with a very strong platform or structure. So LLM will take a role on that, but that's not about taking part of the humans. It's helping humans to do the work easier, faster, more precise.
There's a lot of routine work in basically all development, and much of that can be replaced. And also, of course, you get support from the knowledge base that we have through systems like GPT.
Perfect.
So it will make you better, I think, not reduce the need.
Not useless, better.
No, we will be better in the business
Perfect.
analysis.
Perfect. I like that. I like that viewpoint. I want to be better. So that's a nice way or a bright way to end this episode. Ivar, I want to thank you very much for joining me today and sharing your ideas. I want to invite people who are watching us right now to join Ivar in 2 days with Alistair Cockburn to talk about use cases in this meetup that we are going to put the links right now here. So Ivar is going to provide me some links and I will put all them below this video. Be aware, take a look at this after. And if you are watching it recorded, thank you very much. Don't please subscribe to this channel on YouTube, The Brazilian BA. There's a lot of other videos talking about Nimble in different perspectives as well. You can look for those. Ivar, I'm going to end this episode. Please stay a little bit more with me so we can chat a little more, right?
Okay, I will.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you all.